It's really lovely to be here and to be sharing together in this space. I feel really lucky to be able to communicate and learn from each other. So thank you so much. So just as we've heard from Alicia and from Sue at the beginning of our time together, we are facing these unprecedented and challenging times together. And collectively, we're facing a new range of challenges and burdens, both professionally and personally. And I feel we've really reflected those. And I think it's important to echo Sue's gratitude at the beginning of the presentation tonight. And I also want to send my personal thanks and gratitude to everybody that's working so hard and facing so much in all areas of life, really. So not only in the healthcare services, but all of those key workers and critical workers that are sustaining us and ensuring that we have access to food and that we're able to continue, and all of those teachers supporting our children. So I really wanted to start with a huge amount of gratitude. I wanted to echo kind of what Alicia had alluded to. I think one of our biggest challenges in this time has been actually, like we face all the time, is an information overload. We're living in an information age. It can be really challenging to navigate and look through, sift through masses of information, and yet we're expected to do this really rapidly in our work. And I would say, as an educator, that's something that I felt really under pressure to do, is to respond and listen and look out for new updates daily sometimes, and sometimes even within the same day, new information is emerging. And I think for all of us working in healthcare, that's one of our biggest challenges at the moment, is remaining up to date and informed. And equally, the challenge is that evidence is growing as we learn more about this novel virus. And so we've got lots of researchers that are working really hard, lots of amazing lead midwives working around the country. I know there's groups of professors of midwifery coming together to look at the evidence and help and support our Royal College and the NMC, Public Health England and Health Education England are all working really, really hard to navigate this information together. I think in order for us to do that, as we've heard from Alicia, we've got to be aware of where to source the information we need. And I've put some slides together with a very specific focus on, as educators, where do we need to go to keep up to date? We're lucky as midwifery educators because we have the lead midwives for education, and they are a group of 55 lead midwives for education that are working together as a group to look at all of the guidance and apply it to midwifery, working together in this really cohesive way to disseminate information throughout the approved education institutions, the universities where students are sitting. But equally, they're facing masses of information and variation. One area that I think we should all be looking to during this time is the COVID-19 web hub that the NMC have put together, and I find it such a brilliant resource. It has frequently asked questions that you can look to, and I think that if you're looking for an area to really feel updated as an educator and as a student, I would urge you to go there. And also for our clinical colleagues who were working, supporting learning in practice, again, I would, in the moments you do get a chance to update yourself, especially those that are overseeing student learning, it's really important that you go and have a little look on the NMC website. Also, the Royal College of Midwives has put together some great resources and pulled together lots of information for you on their website. And you just need to put RCM COVID-19 and you can click into these useful resources. And there's a specific area for students and educators that, again, I would urge you to look at. We've been really supported as educators with the Health Education England guidance and frequently asked questions. So for those educators that have not yet read this, I really recommend that you do. It will have come through your university systems and communications, and we can put a link to it at the end of the presentation for you to read, and it has some really helpful answers to help you navigate the recommendations. And for students, the Health Education England have put out a really helpful guide to help you also understand those 3 areas that Alicia alluded to. So the support for students in their first year, and them requiring to work in theory and advance their theoretical knowledge and prepare. And there's information about those people in their second year of studies or their first 6 months of their final year. And there's information and questions and answers for those of you in your final 6 months of your training. And I think it's a really helpful resource to supplement the information coming from your university. So as educators, the challenges that we face are really similar and mirror a lot of what Alicia said the students are facing. And I'm sure mirror the challenges midwives working in clinical practice are facing too. The biggest challenge is digesting all of the updates. I think sometimes there's the assumption that we are told before, just like midwives working in clinical practice, sometimes women and families will feel that midwives would have been informed before them about changes and updates, but we're often receiving news at the same time or sometimes after students are receiving it because we're busy teaching online or working. We've had to amend programmes rapidly to accommodate the new and emerging standards. For example, having to bring theory information forwards for first year students and potentially for second years too, supporting practice areas with the updates and the information to support our clinical colleagues who have little time to keep up to date with the information. And we've had to start navigating, for many of us, online learning and responding to really big variations out across from one university to the next. Programmes are so different and variable, and yet students talk amongst themselves between universities, and that can create challenges. It can make people feel really anxious, and it makes us feel anxious too if our colleagues in other universities are doing different things to us. Who's doing the right thing, the best thing for students? So like Alicia, I want to think of some ways that we could work together to support one another. And I feel as an educator, my focus is in these 3 broad areas. I feel responsible, and my focus is in supporting students at the heart of everything that I do in order for them to support women and families safely and effectively. But around that, I'm also working to support practice and practitioners and midwives working in clinical practice. And I feel that we need to really work hard to support one another. I feel that we're in it together. I think we have to share our vulnerability in these difficult times and work really closely together and be really compassionate and understanding, and recognise that we all probably don't have the answers at our fingertips that we'd like to be able to share, or understand the full consequences of all of the recommendations until we're actually trying to implement that in practice. So I wanted to focus on supporting students, and I feel for us educators, our challenge now is to make sure that at the top of our work is offering that extra pastoral support for students, giving opportunities to listen regularly, providing time to meet online, to talk through and let students share their experiences. We've got to be working really hard now at this time as students are making their decisions to opt in or opt out, to prepare placements for the changes that have been brought forward with the emergency standards from the NMC. We've got to review the course requirements with each individual student to support them to know what they require to do in order to qualify on time to continue safely on their programme of studies. And we need to continue to respond to the mass variation between students, but also around the country and our placement settings that we are attached to. In order to support students, it's really helpful for students to access the e-learning for healthcare modules that you can take, and we are recommending students to update themselves with this, especially in preparation for returning to practice. It's freely accessible to all students, and we'll make sure that links are shared with everybody at the end of the presentation. We also have access, as the creator of All for Maternity, a big area that we focus on supporting is education and supporting your learning, sharing and caring needs. And we have, like Alicia's talked to you about, areas that are freely available to support you. And it's lovely to work alongside Sue and all of the team with Matflix, who have a range of videos and worksheets and resources that you can work through. And I know that a special offer is being made to both of these sites for anybody that would like to take out memberships. So universities can access the Matflix for £500 for the 6 months, and we're doing 6 months free at All for Maternity for anyone that wants to take out an individual membership to offer that support. Obviously, the other area that we're working really hard as educators and clinical educators is to support practice. It's really important to make sure that whilst we're supporting educators and clinical practice, that we mobilise and access our existing networks. It's been so wonderful over the last week. Another key moment for me has been pulling together the national networks that have been developed because of the future midwife standards. We've been coming together as a national group to discuss what the new standards, the emergency standards, mean, and pooling our resources and sharing resources. Obviously, SSSA preparation is a big priority now for midwifery and most midwifery institutions and practice settings. And in order to prepare for this, we need to engage with local practice education facilitators and practice development midwives, and obviously all of those clinical frontline midwives that will be supporting students as they return and continue in practice. And obviously there will be those individual and bespoke variations we need to be mindful of. So preparing for the SSSA for all midwives working clinically that will be supporting student learning and practice, and for all of our education colleagues, there will be some maternity units that's already transitioned to the new SSSA Part 2 standards from the NMC. But there will be many maternity units that haven't yet done this, and many approved institutions, universities that haven't. And they'll be very busy now trying to prepare for this so that we can support students to return to practice safely and effectively with appropriate supervision. So I'm recommending to anybody watching that is an educator, or anybody watching that's a clinical educator, to please read the SSSA standards that are available on the NMC website alongside the emergency standards. This is a really helpful infographic that's been shared by the lovely Lindsay Illman, who had some money from Health Education England to look at the new NMC standards and look at coordinating a national group to look at developing a national framework for student assessment in practice. And she's created this really helpful infographic that just explains the transition from mentorship and sign-off mentorship to supervision and assessment. And that's what many of our clinical colleagues in practice will be encouraged to do with the support of the universities. And obviously for students, they need to be familiar that their universities and practice areas where they're supported with their learning will be transitioning, and they need to be familiar with these new roles. So mentors will become practice supervisors, and that can be anybody with a healthcare registration. Then they will be giving you support and supervision every day or every week, depending on who you work with. And the practice assessors at the end of your placement will do your summative assessments with the support of your academic assessors. So it's really important to students to remember, as midwifery students, you won't be joining a temporary register. You will be continuing to be supported through effective supervision and assessment to complete your university requirements. So there's a little note. There's a little note at the bottom with the list of the new emergency standards requirements for all student midwives to be supervised. We also have to remember as educators and students to support one another by accessing our existing networks, using social media safely in line with our recommended guidelines from our regulators, share good practice and stay in close contact with each other. Obviously, one of the challenges we face as educators is having to move all of our learning online. And so we've provided some resources at All for Maternity with some study sheets that you can share with your students that you might find useful, little videos, articles and some activities to complete. You might also want to join, if you're an educator, the Midwifery Education Facilitators Facebook group. It's a closed group where we can share resources and ideas together. So please come and find us if you're on Facebook. And if you're teaching online, I've just thought of some really top tips to make that as effective as possible. Always check your systems are working and that you have access to headphones and effective equipment, and your university systems should be supporting you with that. You do need more time to prepare your space, and we really recommend, I've found really effective ways of learning is to set students work to do before doing flipped classroom, where the students come back and they can join in on the presentations and share what they found, creating more of a connected conversation during your classroom time. You do need more time to settle everyone into it, and it's worth spending some pastoral moments together to make sure everybody's comfortable. One benefit, though, of teaching online is you can do it in your pyjamas, and you can eat and drink to your heart's content and have notes at your side and still look quite professional. It's also important, just my last slide, is to remember that amidst all of these challenges, we have to look after ourselves. And I would say if you're teaching online a lot, one thing that I've learned really rapidly is the importance of leaving breaks in between the teaching that you're doing online and in between the meetings that you're doing online, making sure you take breaks and also check in with your class if you're teaching online to make sure they're taking regular breaks, standing up, moving, being mindful as well, trying to take regular exercise that hour a day that you can go out, make sure you're using that, because it's easy to find yourself huddled up in a bedroom like me. It's important to spend time looking after one another. So thank you so much.
Thanks for watching this video from the Maternity and Midwifery Forum. For more expert opinion and analysis, hit the button below to subscribe.